7 years ago, they announced that the South Korean government announced they were going to build this massive Navy base with the specific intention of housing Aegis missiles. And this base was going to house 20 warships, including the Aegis destroyers, nuclear submarines, and be massive. And basically what it meant was putting concrete over over this wonderful ecosystem, this coastline that for the past 4,000 years, even longer than the village of Gangjong has been around. It's only been around for 400 years, but even people before then, they've been taking their food from this coastline to the tune of over 500 species of mollusks, over 80 species of seaweed. This is how they've eaten, and this was their livelihood. Now that's fenced off, it's covered with cement, and the people have to make money to eat. I guess they'll be able to get jobs at the base once it's built. So why don't we just show some slides? This no longer exists. It existed last year. It's a freshwater pool because what happens is it rains at the top of Jeju-do, which is a volcanic island, and the top of it is Mount Hala, which formed the island. It's a dormant volcano, and the water seeps down through the lava bed, and it comes up predominantly in Gangjong village. You can drink this water. It's no longer there. It's covered with cement, and it's contaminated. What you see there, those greenhouses, they look kind of like army barracks, and it doesn't look like something you'd see in a typically beautiful tropical picture of Hawaii, for example. But actually, it just shows the agricultural sophistication of these people, because unlike in the United States, where we just irrigate by spraying, having these big sprayers, and you lose a lot of water to evaporation, actually, this is enclosed, and so they create a humid atmosphere which grows the most awesome tangerines in the world. Mayor Kang would be a tangerine farmer if he didn't have to fight this base that's destroying the farms, taking the farms. This is the water source that feeds Gangjong. It's the main water source. You can also get water in many of these tide pools that come up, and it feeds out to this river here. One thing that's really interesting, it's one of the few places in South Korea you can just drink the tap water. So here you can see, this is a gorambi. The gorambi is the name of the huge, it's almost like a Kona-like lava spill, but it's different because it's a different kind of lava. It's andesite versus basalt, which is what you have on the Big Island. It's pretty much gone. I mean, they've covered it, they've blasted it. That started last year. And this is one of the endangered species. I might add, of course, when you have over 60 endangered species of coral is being dredged now. And when you have over 500 species of mollusks, most of them are endangered or endemic, which is specific to that area. And this is one of the endangered species. It's the red-footed crab and the wide-mouthed frog. And this is a henyo. This is one of the diving ladies. They still have, we normally think of the Japanese as being the ladies that go diving, and they don't really exist anymore because of except for tourism. But in Jeju, they still actually are subsistence gatherers of food. And so here they are in front of their union hall. And this is an example of the coral that's dying as we speak, because they're now doing construction 24/7. So I wanted to give you an idea of what's at stake here and what these people are fighting for and why they're fighting so much. That's an underwater protest. I went to the International Union for Conservation of Nature conference last fall. I met a lot of cetacean experts. Nobody internationally knew that there were dolphins in Korea. But Jeju is a really unique zone because it's where the subtropical waters come up on this thing called the Tsushima Current from south of Taiwan. And they come up and they meet with the temperate waters. And so there's a really interesting melange of species that are very unique to this island. So the dolphins, there's only 100 left in South Korea. These are the only dolphins in Korea. And the cetacean experts from around the world were shocked and amazed and horrified all at once. They never knew there were dolphins. Now to find out that they're being killed because their habitat's being dredged, it was really intense. So this was They hadn't started building the base. The base was announced 7 years ago, and in about 2007, or yeah, 6 or 7. And so the people had been camping out and protesting. And this was the first really big crackdown where riot cops were sent down from the continent of Korea to basically beat up and arrest a lot of people. This was the peak of a lot of national activity, protesting, and here you have 3,500 Jesuit priests that came from mainland Korea. They're having a vigil, a prayer vigil to save the Gurumbi. The Gurumbi became a symbol for the preservation of the coastline and the coral. And here, several months later, they started blasting, dynamiting, and bulldozing. And this is what it looked like once they started the dredging. And there's no more clear water on the Gurumbi. Like I said, it's covered with concrete. Next, please. This is one of our LA Sung-hee Che, who lives in Gangjang Village, and it was actually her and Bruce Gagnon, who you saw earlier, both board members of the Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space, who were the first to bring this struggle out because they had been struggling in complete anonymity, this village, for like 4 years or something ridiculous, and just feeling extremely helpless. And Sung-hee, you can see she's like an incorrigible tweeter. And so it was her, of course, that got the word out. And so here are examples of the protests. This is life every day in Gangjang Village since 2011, 2012. I kid you not. 24/7. So daily life. This is a congresswoman who represents Jeju, and she chained herself to the path where the trucks were going to go through, the construction trucks, for 3 months. And here, at this protest, 22 nuns and priests got arrested. The Jesuits are very activist on this issue. This is a woman being arrested by a plainclothes policewoman for protesting at the governor of Jeju's office. This is the mayor getting arrested the first time, at which point he was incarcerated for 3 months. This is a woman crying at his arrest. Here he is in jail on a visit, always the cheerful chap. And this is when I was there last fall. I took a picture out of my hotel window. This is barbed wire that people are scaling. They covered the Gurumbi with barbed wire because a lot of people, a lot of activists were getting onto the Gurumbi and sort of occupying it. So they covered it with barbed wire. And this is young people formed a team called Save Our Seas, having nothing to do with the international organization. They just called themselves that. They go around and check to see if the military is following environmental law that's supposed to exist, and they're not, and they're documenting it. But in the background, you see Tiger Island. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a biosphere reserve, and the ships, the warships, it's only a mile from where this base is being built. The warships go exactly through the path of this UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. And here's some cops surrounding people trying to go out in their kayak because they made recreational boating illegal near the base. And here's some people breaking that law. It's a $10,000 fine, but what they're doing is if you look at that crane about a third way up, there's another protester who climbed up and occupied it for a few hours. Actually, all day. And he went to jail for several months, and he was absolutely thrilled because it ended up stalling construction for a week. Because every day, vast devastation takes place. So whenever you can, the goal is just stall whatever means necessary, stall construction. And this is the 4,000-year-old village ruins that were uncovered and bulldozed. This is what the crops now look like because of the dust from construction. These are the women's group farmers protesting. And this is a big rally they had. 4,000 people came to this in the capital of Jeju Island, and it didn't get reported in the Korean media. They actually marched up the spine of the peninsula to Seoul to protest. It took 1 month camping out along the way. And this is when they got to Seoul. People had joined them along the way because they were getting allies from labor and people who had been displaced by bases. And they all gathered in Seoul, and 5,000 people showed up. Okay, but here's the problem. In the meantime, the village was unfortified, so Samsung took the opportunity of many of the villagers, like the mayor, on this march up to Seoul, to start cranking up construction, and they were going 24/7, and then the villagers who were left were forced to start camping out. The few villagers were camping out at night and sleeping in front of, because the whole point every day is they block construction, and there are every day 300 to 1,000 riot cops that are poised right outside of the base gates too, to drag away anybody. And we're talking about protests that are perpetual, 24/7, ranging from maybe 10 or 6 people to maybe 20 or 30 or 40 people. It sort of depends, but there's just this constant ebb and flow of protesters and a constant attacks about 8 times a day of riot cops pulling the people away as, meanwhile, these cement trucks line up. So the whole goal is to delay construction. So they are delaying construction, and it just continues. So they started putting boulders, too, anything they could do to try to block these trucks, construction trucks. And here's an example. And then the cops have to take them out. And it's just this game that goes back and forth. They brought in really cheap, underpaid Vietnamese labor. And this is a banner that says, if there's a Vietnamese person here, I could be off, but I was told it says, the people of Quang Trung love their village as much as you love yours. Please don't help build this Navy base. And this is pretty recent. This is February of 2013. And do you remember that picture of the river mouth? This is coming off one side of the river mouth now. Oh, and this was May 10th, 2013. This is Mayor Kong getting arrested. We didn't think he'd be able to be here tonight. He had chained himself to a tent because they had sent up these Occupy-style tents outside of the base gate. I mean, this man, his family, his ancestors have lived there for thousands of years. He was born there. And the riot cops that are brought in from Seoul and rotated every 2 weeks so that they don't get too friendly with the villagers, grabbed him and just basically started, like 20 of them, I saw the video, started to pull him, and he looked like he was going to die. So they arrested him, and then I got this, and you know, we had already paid for his ticket, and I got this email from Sung-hee who said, you know, who knows when the mayor will be released, and I had no idea what she was talking about, but then I looked on Facebook, and which is also how they arrest a lot of people, is their names are on Facebook. But I looked on Facebook and it turned out he had been arrested. And I thought, well, that's it. He's not coming. But 3 days later, he went to court and the prosecutor said, we can't release him. He's going to be a flight risk. He's going to leave the country. So Mayor Kong said, no matter how far I am from Jeju Island, I'm going to swim back and defend my island. I'm not a flight risk.